Welcome, welcome. It's been a while since we have had a class. I feel like, I don't know. We had a class last week, but it was a Zoom class for my Patreon. So it feels like it's been a while since I've actually done a class. So if you're here tuning in with me, welcome. If you're new here, my name is Paige. I'm the Chief Pixel Pusher and Paintbrusher over at Gumption. And every week I do a live class, and tonight we're going to be painting a Viola, and we're also going to be discussing gouache. And I'm just going to demonstrate a little bit about gouache. And so if you're down with that, we are going to do that. So tonight's class is going to be about an hour long. And if you want to access the imagery for this class, you can go ahead and do that in chat. I have included that link there. I'm going to be sketching, I think, my Viola tonight, but if you want to trace it, there's also an image there where you can trace it from. Tonight I'm going to be using core watercolors, and I'm going to be using quinacridone, magenta, and ultramarine blue, along with a little cad medium yellow. It doesn't really matter what yellow you have, so whatever you've got, you can use. You don't have to have gouache for this class. I was just going to demonstrate it for you in case you were curious about it. If you have questions or you're just tuning in, let me know that you're here live with me in the chat. Say hello. And if you throw questions in there, I can throw them up on the screen. And if you have questions, you can no doubt know that other people have questions too. All right, let us see here. Okay, so we're going to switch camera views here really quick, and then we will get started. See, do we have anybody in chat with us? So it looks like Laurel and Sam are here. So hi guys, it's nice to see that you are tuning in tonight. I'm going to switch my camera view here really quick. Yeah, there you go. You can see the operations behind the scenes here. And this is what we're going to be painting tonight. And so we'll sketch that out together here. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in chat. Okay, sorry here. The little things behind the scenes. Okay. So I'm going to show you the image really quickly that you can download. Maybe if I can get my iPad to work. So this is what we're looking at. Here's your reference image and your tracing image if you want to go ahead and access that link, or you just want to be able to view that. My schedule has been a little funky here lately because apparently last week wasn't supposed to be a Patreon class, and I thought it was. So sorry for anybody who was planning on tuning in. Okay. So actually I'm going to bring this back up, and I'm just going to show you the difference here. So both of these flowers are painted in watercolor, and this is in gouache. Oops, let's see, we'll tune in here a little bit closer. And gouache is opaque and has kind of a chalky finish. And so when I originally was doing this assignment, I thought maybe I would include that in our assignment, but it didn't look as different as I was hoping it would. Of course, you can see the difference between this and this is quite different. This is transparent. This is not. And really the difference between gouache and watercolor is that gouache has whiting chalk in it, which makes it opaque. But we'll play around with a little bit of it tonight for fun. So first, let's get started. We're going to start sketching out our little Viola, and I just decided to do one Viola because there are subtleties in this flower, this particular flower, that you may not see when you're just kind of starting out painting. And that's what I love about flowers is, you know, white isn't really just white. It's got lots of other colors in it and can be really fun to paint. And I'm proud to say that these are my violas. I bought some flowers this year, and they're really quite pretty. I'm also really wanting to branch out some of these classes to maybe include some colored pencil exploration and maybe some gouache exploration. So if you're interested in that, or you have a particular medium that you're really a fan of, go ahead and throw that in chat. And hopefully you can hear me okay today. So these are pretty easy to draw, really nice organic shapes there. And I'm just using this pencil that I found. It's just a clicky pencil. And that will probably suffice for my sketching. How are you guys doing in your sketching process? Let me know if I'm wind up going too fast for you. So I'm going to kind of skew this a little bit. Okay, so like I said earlier, I am going to be using quinacridone magenta. If you have a hot pink of some sort, or you have opera, it's another option to use. As you can see, this is a really rich hot pink there. So I'm going to mix up and make it pretty concentrated. And at the same time, I'm going to have you mix up some ultramarine blue, also pretty concentrated. Okay. Let's see. I don't have all my brushes over here, but so I'm using maybe, what would this be? This might be an 8 size round brush. Scoot this up a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off painting these petals first and letting them dry before we start moving on to our next. We can work in these other areas a little bit while these vibrant ones dry. So I'm just going to try to work pretty fast. I'm going to move this bead around this petal, this bead of water, adding more pigment if needed. And then tapping in a little bit of this ultramarine blue kind of along this edge. We have a bit of a shadow here. You can also mix this into your paint a little bit if you want to and create more of a toned purple. I'm trying to work fast because here in Idaho, it really dries fast, this paper, at least in the room that I'm in today. So look how pretty that is. I might just take a moment and let that spread and dry for a minute while you get your paint ready. But what I love about core watercolors is they are just so vibrant, and they really do keep that pretty color. And actually, while you're painting, I'm going to go snag my hair dryer on the other side of the room here and keep painting. And you can see mine is starting to dry over here. I'm going to get my hair dryer out. And see if I can't speed this along a little bit. So I'm going to mute myself really quick. Okay, and I think now I can move to this other petal. This way it won't bleed into the other petal. And so I'm just going to do the same treatment on the other side. I'm going to use my beautiful quinacridone magenta. And I'm just going to move that bead around. And really try to keep this line here really nice and smooth. And then I'll show you, you can kind of, if you want to on your palette, you can mix your ultramarine blue and your magenta here and kind of do the same treatment along the edge. This just looks a little less blue and a little more purple. This is kind of the shadow on this flower. And then you can kind of just let that dry. We'll move into another area here while that dries now. So I'll give you just a minute there if you're painting along. And while you're painting, I'm just going to mix a little bit of a green, which I'm using this medium cad yellow color. You can use any yellow that you might have. It doesn't have to be cad yellow. I just like this because it's a middle of the road kind of yellow. It's a little richer than a fancy yellow. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a little bit of my ultramarine blue and drop it in here into this yellow. And you can see I'm getting this nice green color. I'm going to add just a little more yellow in there. So when I need it, I have this green color. On the screen, It looks a little kind of like an icky yellow, but from where I'm sitting, it's a little more green. Okay, so probably by now you have painted this petal and are ready to move on. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to just take water and wet this petal here. I'm going to try to work pretty fast as it will dry fast for me. And I'm going to just kind of swipe here to have a kind of a stopping point for my paint. I'm going to dip into my magenta here, and I'm going to tap it in to create this beautiful pink color that is on the petal. And what's beautiful about it is it really diffuses it. You could go ahead and add even some of your Ultra in and tap that in if you want. Isn't that pretty? And if you feel like maybe you've got too much paint moving in over here, you can try to dab it up here. Even with your paper towel, you could dab it up. That in itself will create some interesting shapes with your paper towel. So that's really fun to explore. So I'm really loving this look. And so I'm going to move on to the next one and do the same thing, except for I think I'm going to just use the water kind of in this one area here. And then tap in this beautiful color. It's just gorgeous. I feel like flowers were meant to be painted in watercolor. So again, I'm going to mix a little ultramarine blue in here, and I'm going to tap it in kind of on the bottom part here. And what's beautiful about flowers or plants is they're truly kind of this organic subject matter. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can really be what you make it. And the thing that I love about this process of this wet into wet kind of technique is that it blends and creates its own kind of flow, and you can kind of work with that instead of having to stick to a rigid idea. So while that's kind of drying, I'm going to take my green color that I mixed and just tap it in the center here. The center area has this kind of green color, and then I'm just going to lightly put it kind of in this area. I'll zoom in here so you can kind of see what's happening. You can diffuse it a little with some water if you want. It's very light, and really in the picture it looks white. But we just kind of put that in there. And actually we have this another area that we can do this in. So I'm going to do it down below. It's kind of in this rounded triangle shape here. So I'm just wetting it with water. I'm going to tap in some of this magenta. And you can just watch it spread. It's just awesome. Might tap in a little bit of a purpley color that I've mixed with my ultramarine blue. tap that in there. All right. Okay. So we'll kind of let these dry. We can at this point. I'm going to switch out brushes. I might have to go hunting for another brush. We'll see what I can do here. So on my palette here, I'm going to make a stronger purple color. So I'm mixing some pigment of the ultramarine blue and this magenta, so I can create this really nice, it's a little hard to see it on the screen here, but you can see that's a nice strong purple. And I'm just going to put in this darker purple here. You can see that this goes around a golden color that we will use our cad yellow for. If you get this too dark, you can definitely diffuse it with a little bit of water. And you can always lift a little if you want with a brush that's been tapped on a paper towel. You can see how easily that kind of will lift there. But I'm going to do this for each flower that are these light petals. I should say petal, not flower. Here. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. We're kind of round robining here. So while things dry in one area, we all paint in another. Of course, you can also take this color and sort of tap it around or dab it with your paintbrush. In those areas where we have little flecks. So now it's kind of starting to look like a flower a little bit, I think. We're going to add some to this guy as well. But while you're painting along, hopefully you are, I'm not moving too fast for you. But kind of while we're working here in the center, I'm going to take this yellow because it looks like my purple is here. My purple here is dry, so you'll want to make sure that this area is dry before you add in this yellow color. I'm just going to tap in this golden color. You can even kind of tap into the purple a little bit. I may have done that a little too much, but I'm going to add some more here. All right. So one thing that I think is really can make or break, I think, your flowers, especially when there's white, is you can see, let's see if I can make this bigger here. You can see how we have shading here, essentially. So we have a really like bright kind of white color here and here, but you can see we kind of have this faint purple shading here and even some blue tones here. So we're going to go over these areas with some really diluted watercolor to help shape these petals a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I am going to scoot this over here. and just take a little bit of this ultramarine blue. And that looks pretty diluted, but I might even dilute it more, because we're really looking for the subtle shadowing shading. And this area isn't quite dry on mine, so I may have to run the hair dryer here in a minute, but I'll demonstrate on these lighter petals here so you can kind of see. And I'm just real careful about where I'm placing that. Let's zoom in a little. But just know if you tap into one of these colors, they might bleed into it. You can also do this step before we ever hit the color step too. I'm just going to move that bead over here. And this feels like it grayed out a little bit, so I'm going to just put in a little bit more blue pigment. So when you're painting, flowers are a great resource, or clouds, or as far as subject matter goes, that you can really play with what you think are the whites, because oftentimes they aren't just stark white. They are grays and subtle pinks and blues, and really can, when you're painting, make a huge difference in how they look. So I'm going to hit this upper left petal too, because it's got some shading. I also, when you have veins and flowers or that kind of thing, this is also a really fun technique as well to create really subtle grains or veins in something. Of course, you can add a little bit of pink if you want to your mixture. I'm going to zoom out here. So I've added a little pink here, but it's really diluted. And you can further enhance this by, using more intense colors, or maybe you need to add something darker in there. You can also use your paper towel and you can blot out shapes. So we've done that a couple times tonight. So I'm going to get my hair dryer just to solidify some of my dry areas here, while you continue to work and look on these subtle colors in these in this picture, and I will be right back. Okay, so how are you guys doing? Hopefully you're able to keep up with me here. Let's see. So I'm going to do another pass of a more a little darker blue. So I'm just going to snag a little bit of my ultramarine blue here, dilute it. And then on this side of this petal, there's a shadow here. So I'm going to try to paint that in. It's going to mix with my other paint a little bit. But this helps define this petal edge as well. And you could even bring this inside here where there's a bit of a shadow. And you can really play with this. Now, if we'd have done this light part first, of course, you're not running into any other pigments. But you can also paint in these little veins that are coming off from these areas here. And by layering it, you can really kind of give this flower some dimension. Let's see. So at any point, you can go back into this painting if you want to make this even more vibrant or darker. You can apply again. I am going to add kind of some flecks, I think, in here. Just to add a little bit of texture. And as you can see, this kind of, you could go back in and make this a little bit darker if you want to. It's a little bit darker in a reference image, but I think I'm happy just doing some kind of flecks in here. Just by tapping my brush there. And if I want a really dark, let's see. If I want a really dark, there are these dark, almost black areas that kind of sunburst off of the center area. You can either use a really dark color like Payne's Gray, or you can mix a really, really dark purple. And really what that means is you're really concentrated in your pigments here. It's more pigment than more pigment, less water. And you can let's zoom in here so you can really see this. You can really create this dark color. So now I'm going to show you what gouache tubes look like. And I'm just going to paint around this flower by making a green color in gouache. I'm sure you probably don't have a gouache handy. You certainly don't need it for this exercise. So you're going to mix a watercolor green, and you'll just do the same thing with me. I just wanted to kind of introduce you to gouache and just show you what it looks like when we paint with it. So gouache, like watercolor or oil paints, comes in a tube like this. You can reconstitute it with water. It is opaque, and I may need more, but we'll kind of work with what we've got here. A lot of illustrators back in the day, not so much anymore, most stuff is done digitally, but they would use gouache because the great thing about gouache is it's matte. And so when you photograph artwork that is gouache, painted in gouache, it's kind of it's matte, and so it photographs really nicely. So when I was in school, when I was in graduate school, they were still teaching about gouache a little bit, but of course, these days people are moving towards digital. But this is a great paint to utilize if you like watercolor, you want something a little more opaque, you can use it with watercolor. Let's see, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. If you don't really like acrylics, or you're wanting to experiment with a different kind of paint, gouache is a good place to start. It mixes kind of similarly in a way to oil, where you can mix in and add light areas. It is quite lovely, and it's not always been my favorite kind of paint, but I enjoy trying new mediums just to test things out a little bit. So we're just going to kind of surround this flower, and what this will do is it will create these crisp edges that will define these petals even further. I'm going to zoom out a little here. Might need a little more yellow. So M. Graham paints, these are a good paint, good artist gouache. I also have some Beam gouache paints, but these are a little, I think, a little more opaque, maybe. And these paints have honey in them as one of their part of their binder, and so does M. Graham's watercolors as well. So they're a nice consistency. I thought it would be fun to play with the texture, the juxtaposition of this opaque paint and the watercolor, which is transparent, next to one another. And anytime that you need to add a little more fluidity to your gouache paint, you can just add water. You can see that it can be transparent. It can be watered down too. And like I said, you can reconstitute it. unlike acrylic paint. I like watercolor because it is so mobile, and you could use gouache the same way. So you can just have fun. You can cover up areas that you might want to paint over, and it will paint over that area. So you can see I'll take some more yellow here. And you can totally cover up areas and paint over them. Whereas watercolor, you can paint over an area, but it doesn't always work in our favor. So what questions do you guys have for me tonight? If you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. Be happy to answer anything. And if you have certain things that you'd like to see, you wanted me to, I recently had somebody suggest they'd like to see me illustrate food in Procreate and kind of do a tutorial on that. So I am planning to do one of those for you. So if you have certain things you'd like to see me do in watercolor, please let me know. And if there are other things that you'd like to see or you have questions about or would like to explore, let me know. I've had a lot of new subscribers here in the last couple months, and so welcome and thanks for joining and following my channel. It has been a real treat to be able to paint live with you guys, and during COVID times, and has really been a wonderful avenue to share my love of painting. All right, let's see. We have a comment here. All right, so Laurel says that she was interested in colored pencils and mixed media, so that's great. I'm excited to hear that. I really want to do a class where we explore colored pencils and watercolor. You can use them both in conjunction. And so thanks, Laurel. Look for that coming up because we definitely can do some colored pencil tutorials. I really love colored pencils as well, and sometimes painting isn't for everyone. It can be kind of intimidating, or, you know, some folks really love to draw and are really good at drawing, and it seems like colored pencils are kind of that next step to get into color. I know that for me, I think, you know, as I was learning to draw and getting into colored pencils were kind of that first kind of step probably in my journey. So it's a great suggestion. Thank you so much. All right. So if you have any questions for me, throw them in the comments here. And I just want to thank my Patreon subscribers, Colin and Laurel. You guys are always supporting this channel, and I appreciate you coming and painting along with me. And I hope that you learned something new and you really enjoy it, because that's what it's all about, is getting a little creativity in your day and enjoying it. And hopefully painting and creating is relaxing for you. If you want to learn more about Gumption or me, you can go to ihavegumption.com and check out my merchandise there and some of my work there. And it looks like we might actually be done with class a little bit early. So if you, you'll have a few more extra minutes in your evening to go hang out with your family, I think. But thank you for being here, and I really appreciate you tuning in. And tune in next week. Let's see, next week will be another YouTube class. I've had my schedule all screwy this month, and so we will be on YouTube next week. We'll probably be doing a mixed media piece just because you requested it, and I think it will be really fun. So look for that next week. You can always go to my calendar or check my YouTube channel. When I set up these in advance, it will tell you what we're learning. And so I think that's probably it for me for tonight. So thank you so much for tuning in. And, oh, we have a comment. Oh, that's awesome. I love it, Laurel. That's great. And if you did download the image that I sent you, if you're not Laurel and you're tuning in, go ahead and grab that now while you can in the chat, and then you can paint from that, and you can do the whole painting in watercolor if you want. So thanks, Laurel. I think that's so cool that you're painting your second flower. So awesome. You'll have to send it to me and let me know how it turned out. Okay, guys. Well, I've said goodbye already once, so I'm going to let you go now. But I really do appreciate you tuning in, and I will see you later.